Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Apologies for the delay in getting this video out to you, but it's been a busy couple of days at work and wanted to give it my full attention rather than trying to cram it into only the little tiny bits of spare time I had, but it's actually a proper day off today so I can focus on it. To all the Star Wars geeks out there like myself, may the 4th be with you. That reminds me of, I had an email a couple of weeks back during one of the international breaks from an older gentleman who was just told me, cut out anything that isn't Spurs. I don't want to hear about anything else. I don't want to hear about Star Wars. I don't want to hear about films or holidays or anything. It was quite a stern telling off for me. And the irony was, it was a Q&A. I was answering questions. I had no choice but to... I did. I guess I could have ignored every question that was non-Tottenham. But hey, I like talking about other stuff as well, as you probably know. If life was all just Tottenham Hotspur, I think we'd end up going crazy because they're a club that do that. But on to Tottenham Hotspur. Let's talk about them. So we've got a win to talk about, so that's good in itself. That's a start after the last couple of performances. Tough week ahead, of course, that we're going to come to all of that. But look, I think I said this probably in the last video. Leicester was going to be a more comfortable game for Tottenham, which sounds weird when you expect them to have beaten Brighton and Brentford, despite how well Brighton and Brentford are both playing. But obviously, the way Leicester play the game, they're never going to sit back and be compact and look for Tottenham to break them down, and that was always going to play into Tottenham's hands that little bit more. And my hope, it's a big if, but my hope is that with Liverpool and Arsenal, you're going to see similar, that Tottenham will have opportunities to score. Whether that's enough and whether they can keep tight at the other end's another thing. But hopefully there will be games where their attack will actually be able to do more because, we know it's an age-old thing with Tottenham as well. They do struggle to break teams down that sit back. It's not a new thing for Spurs. Maybe just a mentality thing, maybe a patience thing. I don't know what it is, but... Leicester came and look, let's be honest, straight off the bat, Leicester had made 8 changes. They had Vardy, Tielemans on the bench, Barnes on the bench, Maddison had a hip injury, wasn't playing, so this wasn't the strongest Leicester team you could ever see, because obviously they had their Conference League games against Roma as well, which was on a knife edge, wasn't it? It was 1-1. So this wasn't their priority, but to be fair, they still played pretty well in stages as well. So Tottenham still had to do their job, and that's the key thing, was doing the job. And they did. Spurs actually started really brightly. They were pressing really high up the pitch. There were points when Romero and Dyer were they were in the Leicester box, and that wasn't from a set piece. They had pushed on that far. And then Spurs needed Hugo. Hugo Lloris was there to save them, quite literally, with a terrific fingertip save from Patson Daka onto the post, which at the time we were all just like, oh, Spurs got away with that, hit the post. But actually, obviously, on replay, you see what a brilliant fingertip it was and how crucial that was as well. And yeah, I think that was probably as vital as Harry Kane popping up to head home Sonny's corner a little while after, because had they got that goal, then I think you probably would have seen Leicester sit back and make it much more difficult. I think they probably could have with that goal advantage. But no, it was... Why have me say it when Conte can say it? I asked Conte the first couple of questions. We had this really weird thing in the press conference, by the way, which there were people, presumably on some kind of VIP tour, sat behind some glass, just on the side, watching the press conference. I think I've seen it once before. It rings a bell, but it's not something we see regularly. They're sitting, it almost looked like a recording studio off to the side. Or watching someone have the death penalty or something. It was strange. It was strange, and I'd be intrigued to know if anyone who was in that group ever sees this, because I'd love to know what it was. I mean, I'm sure I could ask around and not be lazy, but it was weird. It was a bit weird, and then obviously when we were asking our questions, you're kind of like looking to the side because you kind of got an audience almost. Obviously, they weren't there to see us. They were there to see Brendan Rodgers and Conte. But still, I'd never, I was going to say I'd never seen it. I'm sure we all spoke about it. We're sure we'd seen it once. but you kind of maybe presume it's sound technicians or something. But these were clearly people. There was quite a wide variety of people watching on. But yeah, sorry. So back to the point. I asked Conte a couple of questions to start the presser, and the first one, his answer it was just about the team performance one. It was a good performance against a really good team. The game wasn't easy, and we knew very well that despite them making 8 changes from the last game against Roma, you could see the quality. You could see the squad that Leicester has. I think in the game we started well, and then we were lucky when they hit the post. But after this, we scored with Harry, and then I think we created many chances to improve the final result. I think then we deserved to win the game. For sure, we got 3 points in an important moment of the season, especially because in the next games we're going to face first Liverpool and then Arsenal. Today it was vital to get 3 points. There is only one result and a lot of pressure, but I said to my players to live this moment, to enjoy this moment, because we deserved it after really great work that we did in these 6 months. I think no one at the start of the season could imagine Tottenham challenging for a place in the Champions League, especially in November when there was a change. But for this reason, we have to be satisfied that we stay in this position to fight for a big achievement. Look, Conte likes to remind people that Tottenham really shouldn't be in the top 4 race. He says it a lot, pretty much 2 or 3 times in every single press conference. We get it, Antonio. And to be fair to him, he is absolutely correct. Sometimes he calls it a miracle. He sounds a bit like the meerkat from those adverts. And we get he is right. He is right. He tells us a lot. He's definitely ramming that point home that this would be an incredible achievement, not only for the team, I think, but for him. If he gets them into 4th place, it would. It would be, terrific. But he does say it a lot. He does say it a lot. But, you've got to give it to him that with 4 matches left, mathematically, it is still in Tottenham's hands. And I know in their hands does also include going to Anfield and doing what no one else has done, and that's winning there this season in the Premier League. So I think he's done a terrific job. He has. There's no getting away from it. However much he wants to remind us, he's right. He is spot on. He took on a new Noah Espirito Santo team that was absolutely fragmented. They were in 8th place. They were dreadful on the eye. They were barely scoring goals. And yes, I know the last 2 games before Leicester, where Spurs weren't getting a shot on target, it gave us a quick reminder of what that was like. They were bottom in almost every team statistic possible, weren't they? They really were absolutely dreadful. And to be fair to Conte, he's turned them into the 4th highest goal scorers in the league, Spurs. 5th best defence as well. And, it is. They're there. They're there. The 4th place is there for the taking if they can do it. Win every game and it's theirs. I know that makes it sound like the most simple thing in the world when it's really not. But win these 4 games and it's theirs. And it was his 100th game in charge in the Premier League, which he didn't know. He was told in the pre-match press conference, he was like, oh, really? Because he says he kind of doesn't really look at stats, which I'd be surprised at. I think I know his brother Gianluca is mainly the analyst and the stats man, but I was surprised he didn't know that. You often do when you reach a landmark like that. But this was a good victory in terms of kind of getting Spurs where they needed to be, but there's a long, long way to go. Only 4 matches, but a long way to go, if you know what I mean. So the first player I want to talk about, Christian Romero. Oh, Christian Romero. I'm very tempted to start up a Christian Romero Appreciation Society. Get those laminated membership cards ready for everyone because he is swiftly propelling himself up the ranks of my favourite players. What I loved about Sunday's match was that the thud, the crunch every time he went into a tackle. And you could hear it, honestly, around the stadium. I put some tweet out like that, and someone on Twitter, as they like to do, said, oh, it must have been so quiet, so how rubbish the support is at that stadium. And it wasn't actually that. It was that I think every time Romero goes into a challenge, everyone goes, there's like an inhalation of breath as everyone's like, oh my goodness, is he going to do it? Is he going to get a yellow card or a red or something? And I think it's that little moment of quiet where everyone's like, ugh, and then he does that crunch noise when he goes into someone. And to be fair to him, since Conte kind of came out quite publicly and said he gets too many yellow cards, he makes too many kind of silly tackles, like when he doesn't need to, he's been really disciplined, really disciplined. Don't forget, he had about 4 or 5 games in which if he got another 2 yellow cards, he'd have been banned for 2 matches. And there was a possibility he could have ended up being banned for 3 games, I think, in all, maybe 5 in total. I think it would have been a 2 and then a 3. Had he reached, it would have been 15 yellow cards. In the end, I think he stopped at the 8, and that's it. And we haven't seen him get another yellow since. I do wonder what he's going to be like in the North London derby. I'll be fair to. I really, really hope he stays disciplined in that, because I think Arsenal are going to wind him up something proper. But he was phenomenal on Sunday. He really was. And bearing in mind, there were 59,482 people there, and just everyone. He whipped the crowd every time he made a challenge like that. He whipped up the crowd, and he whipped up the players as well. Look. He is going to mistime the odd challenge. He's only just turned 24 recently. He's still young, relatively young for a defender as well. He is going to mistime a challenge. He likes to do this front foot defending. He anticipates really well. But, he bailed out Ben Davies. Ben Davies made a bit of a hash of a first touch, and the ball was kind of whipped into the box, and he made a really important challenge right in the box. He made a few big headers away, a few moments where he just nicked the ball at the perfect time. But obviously, the key moment was that double crunching challenge to Spurs away for Sonny's first goal. The first one was like a big slap of a challenge, and then the second one, you know what? At the time, we were all like, "Oh my goodness, that's reckless! It could have gone either way." But when I actually looked at it back on Match of Day 2 later that evening when I got in, do you know what? His feet, from the angle of looking from the goal line, his feet were down the whole time. It's not like his studs were up or anything. It was actually more controlled than I thought it was. And won the ball, sent it away, bang, and it was Kulusevski to Son. Son scored a lovely goal. But I just, it was quite funny that the Leicester players all went off and they started moaning about it. They started saying, "Oh, look at him." I think it was Sancho's on the ground, doing what he would do. I think was it one of the analysts kind of said he was looking up "Oh man, they're going to score, I'm going to stay down," kind of thing. And it actually wasn't that bad. I don't know, but that was what they were saying about it. But it was quite funny actually it was quite a nice bit of honesty as well from a manager. It was that Brendan Rodgers, who was asked, "Did you have an issue with that tackle?" And he said, No, absolutely not. There was no problem with that tackle. I had a problem with us not winning the tackle. Romero is strong, aggressive, and that's what you want from your centre-half. And you know what? Romero's this really odd blend of a defender. He's fantastic on the ball. He's got skill. He can kind of spin it over a player, run around and get it on the other side. He can ping a cross-field ball across the pitch. He's very, very confident in possession. He's kind of like a bit of a Rio Ferdinand in that aspect. But on the other hand, he's also a really old-school defender who just loves to put his body on the line, slamming. He loves the physical contact of the game. Reminds me a bit of a Michael Dawson, Graham Roberts type in that respect. So you merge those two, and really, you've got a phenomenal player. One that's got the heart and the attitude and the ability to put himself into these things, but also with the ball skills. And then on top of that, the reading of the game, he's got the intelligence as well. He's got all of the tools, especially with someone like Conte teaching him, to be one of the best defenders in the game. He really could be. It's got all of the elements there. Now it's just about him kind of not getting carried away, I guess. And what I found really interesting was that Conte wasn't too keen on praising him. He really wasn't. I asked him about him, a very direct question. My second question was about Romero, and he kind of said, "Yeah, he had a good game." And then he went off talking about the team, and it's about the team and all the players, which was quite a no answer actually from Conte. And then I think I saw, it was either Sky or BBC. Oh no, it was in his Spurs actually, in the House One. They asked him about Romero. Didn't even really answer the question. He swerved away and spoke about the team again. And I found that quite interesting. And it kind of almost, it seems part of a ploy. It's almost like, all right, you are terrific. We know you're terrific, but you could be so much more. And actually, it was kind of left to Sonny. Sonny was the one who was mainly talking about him after the game. He was talking about the tackle that led to his first goal. So obviously, you're scoring goals, but you're not scoring alone. There's always a previous action. Kuti won it back twice, so he made one tackle, and then the second tackle was obviously risky, which a defender has to do sometimes. Kuti did an unbelievable job. Not only this situation, but the whole game. He was fantastic. This goal for me goes to Kuti because he deserves the credit 100%. I'm very happy to score the goals, but this one goes to Kuti. If you're not aware, Kuti's his nickname, I think from when he was a kid. And that's what all the players, and sometimes Conte calls him as well. Sonny actually spoke really well. It's not to say he doesn't normally, but he spoke really well after the game. They asked him various subjects. Spurs did in their in-house stuff, and also he did some other interviews, and he did. He spoke really well about a range of subjects. And another thing he was talking about, which was really interesting about Romero, was when he was asked about the new players coming in, Bentancur, Kulusevski and Romero, he said, "It's a fresh energy every time new players come in. The first time is not the best feeling because it's a weird feeling. We don't know each other, but now we understand each other. And Kuti has tried really hard, wanting to speak to everyone. So this brings us all the more and more closer, and this changes everything." And that's what I've heard about Romero, is that his English is getting there. It's not great, but it's getting there. But what he's made a real attempt to do is just try to communicate with everyone in the squad. Doesn't leave anyone out. Is not part of any clique. Obviously, the South Americans are going to kind of be that little bit closer because of their shared background, I guess. But that's what I keep hearing, is that he really tries to integrate himself within the squad, and that's huge for him going forward. That's what you've got to do, and not every player that comes to Tottenham do that. There's been a few of the foreign players that have come from overseas, and some recent ones that maybe haven't got on with the whole squad or attempted to get on with the whole squad. And I think that is a big part of enjoying your football as well. Is being one of, sounds so cliche, but one of the lads, I guess. You enjoy yourself that little bit more as well. It becomes less of a workplace and more of a Spurs at the peak under Poch. That was what all the players would say. It didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like they were coming into an office. It felt like they were seeing their friends and enjoying themselves while learning. I think that's terrific. And you can actually see kind of his infectious aggression, I guess it was, and desire on the pitch was rubbing off on the other players. Bentancur was slamming into some challenges. I felt Emerson had one of his best games for a while in the Spurs shirt. Very much the plan seemed to be, all right, Emerson, you don't do the attacking stuff. Leave that to the rest. And you just crack on with defending. And kind of doing more so of just that. I felt he had a really good game. I thought he played very well. And like I say, whenever he went forward, like let's say third goal, for example, it was just a very simple, I'm going to lay it off to Kulusevski. And that was what he did. I think it was the third goal. And that's it. It's keeping it simple for him. And that's not to be patronising. It's just that the defensive side of his game is the better side of his game. So if you can allow him to concentrate on that, I think you get the better version of Emerson. He played well as well. But look, that was the other thing I was going to say. Sessegnon said that Romero tackles like that in training as well. He properly and I love that. There's a lot of players out there who training is just like an extension of the match. They will do everything in it. And it reminds me of Eric Lamela when the players used to say they had to still wear their shin pads in training because Lamela would properly go for you. That's fine to a degree, as long as there's not a naughty tackle. I remember, I think we saw it in the All or Nothing. Eric Dyer went in for a challenge on Sonny that left him with a cut on his shin. So it's not always the best thing at all. And Sonny obviously was understandably very upset about that. But I do think also, on the flip side of that, to have training sessions to being intense, I think it then becomes easier to take that into the match rather than having a lark, not having a lark, but going in soft, I guess, in training sessions. And then suddenly when you're up against that in the match, it's a bit of a culture shock. But yeah, talking to Sonny, it was the Son Heung-min show again. He was superb. He was really good. I had Romero just pipping him as my man of the match, purely because I thought he was superb, but Son was so close. They were very close to both being a joint man of the match, quite frankly. Sonny was fantastic. He's just become he is so crucial to Tottenham. He really is. Kane's renaissance a few months back under Conte was important to start getting Tottenham in the right direction, but I think Sonny's been more consistent in terms of his end product in front of goal. You look at it, in the last 6 months, there's only 6 Premier League games that Sonny hasn't either scored or registered an assist in. 6 games. It's ridiculous. That's how good he is. He doesn't take penalties, obviously, as well. So his 19 goals are technically the most goals scored in the Premier League from open play, more than Salah. And actually, those 19 Premier League goals are also now Sonny's record. That's it, that's his highest tally that he's got in a season in the Premier League. And obviously, he's got 8 assists as well. You know, on Sunday, set up Kane's goal. Once again, another Son-Kane link-up. And then his first goal was lovely movement. It was nice play by Kulusevski. Nicely waited till he saw Son's run. Played it in, but it was slightly behind him. Sonny had to improvise, and he did really well. Kind of turned and slammed it into the corner. But then, yeah, his second goal was just sublime. It was so good. He's done that so many times before, and it was a bit reminiscent of the goal he scored at the King Power a couple of years back. But I'd say this one was better. Just that moment where it nestles in the corner. And, you know... Actually, yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. It's something that he used to practice as a kid, and he said it was lucky to hear. He always says it's lucky. It makes Paul Miles, the guy that does the Spurs interviews often for after a game, it makes him laugh because apparently Sonny always says it was lucky whenever he scores an incredible goal because he's so modest. He said it was lucky to hit top bins like that. I love it when foreign players use expressions that are so English, like top bins. I love that. To hit top bins like that, I have to be honest and say I practiced so many shots like this, especially in this position, because when I was a kid, I knew I was going to be a winger. So left foot and right foot, I tried so many shots from there. So especially when I score in this position, I'm more than happy because it's hard work paying off because I've had so many shots from there. It's my favourite position. As soon as I hit it, I could see the way the ball was flying, so it was incredible. No one expects you to score from there, but I'm pretty confident to shoot there with my right foot or left foot. And luckily, the ball went in the top corner, and it was a very happy moment. And it is his both-footedness. The ability to shoot with his left or right foot is incredible, Sonny. You can see that is, as he says, years of drilling himself on both feet. It's superb. And I do wonder, because he was asked about his goal tally, and he plays it down so much about him, and it's all about the team. He's so humble, he's so modest. And I wonder whether that contributes to maybe some people not realising just how incredible he is and how he is one of these, among the bracket up there, those upper levels of best players in the world. But maybe it's because he's so unselfish, and that could be part of it. Because maybe when you look at those players who everyone goes, oh yeah, they're the greatest, they're the best. There were players who would always really... That's probably not completely fair, but on the whole, they were the centre point of the team. They were the focal point, and it was about getting them goals and things like that. And you could see that. Whereas Sonny is such a team player, perhaps that's why some people outside the game and maybe from other clubs don't realise just how good he is. Whereas those in the game, you ask anyone that plays, let's say, in the Premier League and ask them about Sonny, and they will rave about him. They really will. And this quote, the goal tally is not important because I want to play Champions League next season. Scoring 19 goals, 30 goals, 25 goals is not important for me because the team is more important than me. I try to do my best for the team. If I get a chance, I want to score, but the numbers are not important for me. I want to finish with these guys, with this team, with the supporters. I want to play Champions League football next season, and it's more important than anything else at the moment. That's the mentality you want from a player. And what's scary is that Conte in his interview to BBC says he can still be much better, Sonny. God, if you're a defender and you think he can get even better than he is right now, good luck. And actually, yeah, Conte was quite interesting. He admitted he told Sonny just before that incredible goal that he was going to bring him off in about 5 or 6 minutes just to essentially give him a rest. And the pair, when you saw him come off, he gave Sonny a big hug and had a bit of a joke, and apparently it was because of that. His quote was, "I gave him a big hug because after an amazing goal, my question was, which is his favourite foot, right or left? He scored a fantastic goal, and 3 minutes before, when I spoke with him, I said, go for 5 or 6 minutes, and then I have to make a change. And I said to him that when you listened that I wanted to make a change, you decided to score this amazing goal. We're talking about a great player, a fantastic player, but it's important at the end of the season to celebrate a big achievement with the team. Otherwise, it remains only a personal success only to score these types of goals." And that's it. When you've got someone like Sonny, who is an extension of the way the manager talks, it's that synchronisation. That's what you need. And Spurs and Conte, they need Sonny to keep firing. They need him to keep leading the way for him, because in these 4 games, he's the player I think that most of those defences are going to be worried about. Probably all those 4 defences are. So the other attacking options, mixed bag, really. I mean, what's the best person to start with? I mean, Kane. It was a funny performance. I didn't think he played particularly well. He wasn't at his best. Jonathan Veal from the Press Association, who's often on one side at home games, I always said Jonathan Veal on one side and Guesty on the other. And Jonathan Veal was counting up in a row how many times Kane lost the ball. And he got up to 5, I think, before he controlled it. So, for Kane, that's very unusual to lose the ball at his feet 5 times. And we're talking about bad touches, bad passes. It was really strange the way he started the game. And yet, obviously, still popped up with the headed goal. He seems to always like scoring against Leicester. But even after that, it was a bit hit and miss with his passing. His radar was a little bit off. It wasn't his best game by a long shot. And he very much kind of took the back seat, I think, to Sonny on the day. Lucas Mora. I mean, Lucas was a surprise to us all. We weren't kind of expecting him to come in. I mean, I understand Conte's logic in terms of Spurs had just gone 2 games where they hadn't had a single shot on target. And I think if you've got Kane, Son and Kulusevski, unfortunately, it's Kulusevski who's probably going to come out. He was very quiet in those games against Brighton and Brentford. So he came out. They gave Lucas a shot. It didn't really work. Well, it didn't work in one respect. It did work in another, which I'm going to explain in a moment. But, actually, Spurs hadn't had a shot on target in 221 minutes before Kane's goal, which is scary. That is definitely was no time. I mean, he pressed well, Lucas. He was doing that. That definitely, he was high up the pitch, really kind of running around and pressing. But he was kind of showing that Lucas of, I'm going to run past one player, maybe 2, and then I'm not going to look to pass. I'm going to run into a third and lose the ball. I know it's difficult coming in when you haven't had the rhythm of starting matches regularly, but yeah, it wasn't great. I mean, I've got the stats here. He touched the ball just 24 times in the entire 50-something minutes he was on, and that was less than any other player who started the game on either side. And he attempted only 11 passes, and just 72.7% of them were accurate. He hit just the 1 cross, and that didn't find a Spurs player. You need more than that. You need more from that from Lucas. He's got the quality to do more than that. So it wasn't great. I mean, Conte praised him after the game. Said kind of almost put him in the same bracket as Kulusevski. But what I would say was the most important thing Lucas did was kind of indirectly gave Kulusevski a little bit of a kick up the backside. And that's not to say Kulusevski, hasn't been wonderful this season, but maybe psychologically, you're coming from Juventus where you have to, if you're not playing well, you're not getting anywhere near the team. It's such a huge club. Whereas with Tottenham, he's come in, he's been sensational. He started every game. Maybe he was starting to think to himself, maybe at Tottenham, you can get away with it a bit more. And maybe it was just a little lesson from Conte to say, no, you have 2 quiet games and you'll come out. You're not yet at the kind of key player territory like a Son or a Kane. So you're not. You don't have that yet. I think he will become that, but not yet. And it worked. It worked an absolute treat because he came on and he looked utterly determined from the off to make a difference. And 2 assists. Like I said, the first was a really nice, nicely thought out ball to Son. The execution of it was probably slightly behind him, but in a way, Sonny made it look fantastic with what he did. And the second one was a simple pass to Sonny for the wonder goal. A little bit reminded me of, in a different way, of Vertonghen's assist to Sonny when he scored that goal from his own half against Burnley. But Kulusevski was excellent. There was one little moment where he got down he did a lovely bit of skill, got down the side. Was it Thomas? I'm trying to remember who it was. Swiped out at him. Because he just knew he'd been absolutely done. Kulusevski was superb. And what I loved after the Son's first goal, he was beating his chest and the badge and properly kind of roaring. He is so loving life at Tottenham. He is. He's found his home. He really has, Kulusevski. And you look at it, he's got 8 assists and 3 goals already from 14 Premier League games. He actually has the most assists in the Premier League in 2022, and he didn't arrive until, he didn't play a game until February. He's actually 6th, I think, in the overall assist table, despite the fact he's only been there for 3 months. Incredible impact he's made. And Sonny said a little bit about kind of the new signings. He said, Kulu and all of the new signings, to adapt to the Premier League is not easy. I suffered in my first year, and even now I'm suffering in some games because it's not that easy. We're very happy and we're very proud that they're working really hard. Their commitment is unbelievable. Lucas did an unbelievable job today as well, but then Kulu came on and he changed the game. He changed the game. He brought some positive energy for the team, which we needed. The last 4 games, we need everybody. It's really important that the new signings are fit and that they're into the team. But what was really interesting was that when Conte answered a question about Son, I think it was, and his impact on the match, he actually suddenly went off on a tangent about Steven Bergwijn, unprompted. No one had asked about Steven Bergwijn. And he said, Steven, for me, it's a bit difficult to keep him on the bench because Steven is maybe the player he should deserve more. But we have to try always a good balance. He is a striker, a fantastic striker. But in this position, there is Harry and then Sonny. Decky gives us quality and quantity, and sometimes it's very difficult. For sure, maybe I'm giving Steven less than he deserves. I want to be honest. Lucas played a good 15 minutes, and we have to continue in this way and prepare for an important game. Right. I agree with him. I think it's been really tough on Bergwijn, but I would say his words perhaps rang slightly hollow because he could have started Steven Bergwijn against Leicester. I'd say that in their cameos from the bench in recent weeks, I think Bergwijn's done more than Lucas. I mean, Lucas had one good run against Brentford before he was cynically brought down. But I'd say on the whole, Bergwijn's probably been the one who looks like he's going to make an impact from the bench. So I'd say out of the 2, he probably deserved it. And then to not give him that shot and then afterwards say that he deserves more, it didn't quite balance out for me. And I know Bergwijn in the mix zone after the game, he didn't do English interviews. I think he only came on for a couple of minutes towards the end, didn't he? But a Dutch media got him and he did an interview, which I've only seen a couple of quotes from, where essentially he said, we're really going to have to look at this in the summer. It's not nice to come back from international football where I'm playing constantly and come back to a club where I'm barely doing anything. And he's not wrong. Look, from what I hear from people behind the scenes at Spurs, how do I put this in the best way? Let's say, so for someone like Matt Doherty, or Matthew, as Antonio Conte likes to call him, when he wasn't being picked, he wasn't getting minutes, he'd go away and he would just absolutely show everything possible, work incredibly hard and get Conte's attention. And that resulted in what we saw before his injury. With Steven Bergwijn, from what I understand from people in the club and those who work with him, is that he kind of maybe almost lets it get to him. When he's not in the team, he feels it. I get it. I do get it. He takes his kind of lack of game time and the setbacks to heart. And I understand that because, especially in that week where he'd scored 3 goals in 3 games for the Netherlands. Was it 3 goals in 2 games? I can't remember. 3 goals anyway for the Netherlands. And he came back and he scored against Newcastle. But both that game and then I think the next game as well, he's still coming off the bench late on for a couple of minutes when Lucas is coming on before him. And I can understand why, morale-wise, you're going to have it absolutely sapped. You are. But I think Conte, I don't know, I mean, maybe Conte responds more to people that use that as fuel to only show to kind of prove otherwise rather than taking it to heart. And I think that's what you're seeing out there. And like I said before, I think he'll go in the summer, Bergwijn. I think for his own good, I think he'll want to go. And while I think Conte would like, Conte just genuinely like him, which makes it all the more puzzling that he doesn't give him more minutes. But I think Spurs have to be in a position where they can't stand it, especially in a World Cup year. Because, he could lose his place in the World Cup squad. And he helped get the Netherlands to the World Cup with his goals. And it would be really rubbish. And also, I think Ajax will pay big money for him as well. Say big money, as big money as Ajax can. It is sad to see because I do think that he could be a really good player. And Conte keeps saying he brings something, he's got something a little bit different. I think the fact that he kind of sees him almost as a central striker in his mind at times, this Kane backup, when I think he's not. I don't really see that. I see him more as Kulusevski's Son kind of, I suppose, backup at the moment. And he can play on either side as well. And as others have said, I do think he could actually probably do a job as a wing back as well, but it just never mentions him in the wing back discussion at all. But yeah, sad stuff at Bergwijn. It is, when I say sad stuff, in context, football sad stuff, as it were. But yeah, so there you go. That was the Leicester game. Now we've got this huge week with obviously Liverpool, Arsenal, and Burnley all in the space of 8 days, which goes back to, Spurs weren't the greatest when they were playing a game every few days compared to a week between. And they're going to have to really manage themselves and maybe manage the squad as well. I mean, Saturday to Thursday, you're probably okay if you wanted to play the same 11 again, but then Thursday to Sunday for Burnley, I do wonder whether you'll see a couple of changes for that. And you're going to 3 teams who are all in terrific form at the moment, including Burnley. Playing against. And to put the task at Anfield into context, Klopp's men have got the best home form in the league. They haven't had a single defeat there in 17 matches, and I think it stretches back into a few of last season as well. They've won 14 of those 17 games, only drawn 3. I think they've only conceded 7 goals as well. It's actually, for those wondering, Spurs have got the 4th best home record in the league, which makes a defeat to like Brighton and Wolves and Southampton as well all the more ridiculous, because they actually have been quite good at home on the whole. But Liverpool is going to be tough. Spurs at Liverpool is always a strange beast. It's like there's been so many games where Spurs have had opportunities to win there. Most notably, obviously, we remember Sissoko running through, desperate to pass to Son, and Van Dijk kind of ushered him into a position where he had to shoot, and he obviously blazed it over, I think he did, and Liverpool went up and scored. I think it was a winner at the end, wasn't it? There's been opportunities where, like I said, I think Liverpool's style of game does also play into Spurs' hands, and Spurs' home game against Liverpool, albeit both teams had a lot of players missing, Spurs created so many chances. And they had a midfield that day of Winks, Dele and Tongi. And they created so many chances. They could have been well ahead in that game by half time. So they know they can play well against Liverpool. It's just this Liverpool team they know how to get the job done at the moment. And that's going to be the biggest task out of Spurs. They're going to have to essentially climb a bit of a mountain to get something on a Saturday night. And, they'll go there and they'll believe they can. But it's about... it's a crucial game. It's just all about the mentality, because you don't want to go into that North London derby, 4 or 5 points behind Arsenal, and with Arsenal knowing they just have to get a draw. You've got to go for the win at Liverpool. You really do. And you know what? I don't think it's just the form that when Spurs fans and people within Spurs, when they look at Liverpool, I don't think they just see the silverware and the form to be envious of. I think they see the stability as something to be envious of as well. Because you look at it and obviously Jurgen Klopp's just signed his new deal, hasn't he? And it can only make you think back to, you remember when Spurs beat Liverpool, was it 4-1 at Wembley? And it kind of always felt like that watershed moment when they both kind of went like that. And Spurs didn't push on from that moment. There were a fair few years when Spurs were finishing above Liverpool in the league. And obviously in recent years, there's no contest. And obviously, I do think it's that stability and that connection. I watched a little video that Klopp did after he signed a new contract. It was just like a camera piece like this kind of thing, and talking to the fans, and just the love for that club that he's got and his staff, and just as I say, the stability, the connection, everything. And it was kind of like, I think that was what Spurs were getting somewhere with Poch and getting there. And obviously they kind of messed it up. Obviously he had some moments where he wasn't quite hitting the heights he was. And I think rather than stick with him, obviously, well, let's put it this way, since that point, Spurs, let's say if Conte were to go this summer, which I'm hoping isn't the case, and I don't think Spurs think it's going to be the case. If they did, then Spurs would have had 5 managers in 5 managers in 3.5 years, almost 4 years. That's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. 5? It's 5 or 6. It might be 5. Might have over-egged that slightly. But still, in that time, Liverpool have just had Klopp and they've built. And obviously they've made key big signings. You know, Van Dijk and Alisson for big money. They were big money, but they were absolutely the thing that squad needed in that moment. And now you've seen they've won the Premier League under them, they've won the Champions League under him. And, you know, even Guardiola looks like he's going to sign a new deal as well. It's like the 2 clubs that are bossing it are going to be the ones with the best stability. Whereas maybe in the past it was more about the rich boys were constantly changing their manager. Whereas now the best clubs are the ones with the stability. And that's what Tottenham need to re-find. They do. You know, it is. Yeah, it's 5th manager in 3.5 years. I'd written it down here. I knew I had. Look, Tottenham want Conte to do that. They want, because Conte's CV, we've said it before, it doesn't speak of a man who stays and creates a dynasty at a club. He doesn't stay there for ever more than, 3 years at the most, 2 on the whole, 2.5. Sometimes not through his own kind of choice, but often it is. But Tottenham really want him to make Tottenham his club where he does that. They want him to see the challenge there and also believe that he can, to get there, believe that he can take them to the level that he wants to be, because the infrastructure is all there. It's just about giving him what he needs, and him, you know, as we've already said earlier in this, he's improved the team so much from what it was when he took over. Yes, he's had 2 quite key additions, but he's done all of that without a pre-season. He's done that with, on the whole, the same players that were struggling early in the season. So as a coach, he is one of the best in the world. And I think, you know, the thing that makes me... Look, first off, let's talk about the contingency plans. Contingency plans, from what I understand, is they will try to look to Graham Potter, and they will have obviously sound out what's happening with Pochettino. Potter definitely is a guy, you know, for the long term. He is that kind of guy, the ones that you would look to. Brighton certainly giving stability. Whether he wants to come to Tottenham, I don't know. I think maybe this summer would be a bit different in terms of perhaps he would feel he's taken Brighton as high as he can. You know, they've got record points total. Maybe from now on, perhaps he can only sully his reputation slightly. I don't know. I'm just kind of putting thoughts into his mind, or thoughts that I think might be in his mind. They may not be. And with Poch, obviously, he's going to be bruised and battered after that PSG experience, but he will have, you know, the experience of winning the league, albeit, yes, I know he's meant to, but also a couple of cups under his belt as well. But what I would say, because this is what slightly can be frustrating, is that I did a 3,500 word article the other day, and the whole end piece was about how Spurs want Conte to be the man. They want him to be the man for the future. And then I mentioned in about 2 bars within 3,500 words on these contingency plans are Potter and Pochettino, you know, the main ones that are looking at. And obviously on Twitter, some people only took those 2 lines and stuck them out and said, Alistair Gold has said this. And it was like, and then I obviously, and understandably, get people replying to that going, oh, he's trying to unsettle. Why did you stabilise the team with 4 games to go? It's like, no, I wrote a 3,500 word article on how Conte is the future and how brilliant he's done and how that's it. But obviously, just in case he decides, because he is repeatedly, we had a press conference on Thursday. Was it Thursday last week ahead of the game? No, it might have been Friday because it was a Sunday match. On Friday ahead of the game, where Conte essentially spent almost half an hour refusing to give any assurances about what would happen in the future and constantly saying, we'll see what the best solution is in the summer going forward. So when you have the manager not giving any indication of what his future is going to be and any sign of commitment whatsoever, you do have to mention 2 pars within 3,500 words that, look, this is what plan B has to be. But plan A is Conte. Plan A is absolutely Antonio Conte. And you know what? I would have said, if you asked me maybe a month or two ago, I probably would have said my feeling that maybe Conte wouldn't have been the Tottenham manager. If you ask me now, when you look at the scenario and the situation, I kind of think he will. I think he will. Look, straight off the bat, he has no break clause in his contract. You know, it's not like he can just suddenly decide he's going to walk away. It would take someone like, I don't know, let's say PSG, which, you know, his people have completely denied, as I said before. PSG would have to come in and give Spurs whatever they wanted for him. You know, that's the way it would have to go down. You know, there's some talk that there could be a bit of a, I don't want to use the words gentleman's agreement, but kind of there'd been chat about, you know, maybe him going if he had to. And this was way, 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 way back when he first had all the talks of signing. But ultimately, there is no break clause, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't. I'm sorry to anyone that's ever had a gentleman's agreement or thought they had. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't matter, and you don't presume it does. Yeah, as I said, it's some suggestions that there might have been a little chat about if this doesn't happen, then I can go blah, 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 blah. But again, that was way back in November, or in the talks before he joined. There is nothing official that states that whatsoever. So, the reason that I think, and this is going to be one of these where everyone's going to now go, well, if he leaves in the summer, like you said, it's like my gut feeling is that I think he'll stay. And that is because I don't think Tottenham have any choice but to back him because of what's about to happen in the Premier League. So you look at it and you've got Liverpool and City are both manager stability. They're going to spend again. They're going to continue to improve and progress. Chelsea, once they get their sale done, they're going to have money and they're going to replace those players that they're losing because of that instability at the moment. Obviously, there's all other things going on with their sale, but the likelihood is that they'll be able to come back and start spending money. Manchester United are going to throw money at trying to fix the problems that they've got, the mess they're in for Ten Hag, to have as best a start as possible. You know, there's a lot of players going out that door, which will free up wages for them to also spend big, I'd say, as well. And there's Arsenal. I keep getting told that Arsenal are they've got a few of their wage bill as well, and they're looking to spend in the summer. So Tottenham can't afford to sit still. They can't. They cannot, because if they do, that gap between a top 4 or 5 teams is going to be huge. This is this seminal crossroads of a summer. We've spoken about it before, but the way the league is shaped up has actually created even more of a scenario where Conte, I think, has to get what he wants. And I don't think, to be fair, I don't think Conte is asking for hundreds upon hundreds of millions to be spent. He's asking for the right signings, the wise signings, the ready-made signings. And I think that's the way Spurs will go this summer. I think there will be a couple of signings, of course, that will fit the ethos of ready for now, but also big for the future. Romero, Bentancur, Kulusevski, all brilliant examples of that. Players who are in the younger category, but they are superb players right now. But I think also you will see Conte say, well, a bit like Andy and Lou, isn't it, from Little Bit, oh, that one? That's kind of what Conte will be. He will say, I want this player, and I think Spurs and Paratici will do their best to get that player. And I think very much so, that has to be the case. Trust the man. You know, I understand that he had, quite a big hand in wanting Kulusevski and Bentancur, and they were the two that made a difference. Whereas a lot of those summer signings, barring probably Romero, haven't really worked out exactly for different circumstances. But yeah, honestly, trust the man. And there is this excitement about what he can achieve next season. If you think about it, with a proper pre-season, with a squad tailored to his requirements, the whole environment right around him. And obviously they hope that he'll feel that excitement as well. Obviously, finishing the top 4 will give everyone the buzz possible. But I hope that if they don't, and if they aren't able to get in that top 4, that they kind of realise what they've got in Conte. And I'd hope that Conte realises what he's got in Tottenham Hotspur as well. Because look, this isn't some small club. It isn't. Yes, they've not hit the heights that they used to. But this is the club of Bill Nick. This is the club that was the first double winners. This is the club that was the first British side to win a European trophy. This is no small club. And I hope he does realise kind of what he's got with Tottenham. And, I know the expression sleeping giant is often chucked around, but I think it could be with Tottenham, and especially with Conte at the helm. We talk about Poch, we talk about Potter and all that, and I think they're both superb coaches. But if you ask me gave me the three of them with Conte, who I want to be in charge of Tottenham Hotspur next season, it's Antonio Conte. It is. Because I think with everything he's got about him and the mentality he brings, allied, as I say, with the right squad and environment, I think Spurs are absolutely going to put the cat among the pigeons next season. They really could. And for him, I also do wonder, what else out there is the perfect fit for him? I mean, obviously PSG, I think as I said before, PSG for me doesn't seem like a great fit for Conte. I've spoken about his European record. He's only won 3 in his last 15 Champions League matches. The Champions League is not his happy place, let's put it that way. At PSG, that's all they really care about. They expect you to win the league. That is nothing for Conte's CV, really, if he wins Ligue 1, unfortunately. It's what is expected, and that's what everyone's saying about Poch right now. So I don't see PSG as the best fit for him. Yes, of course, he adds more silverware, but it's not the silverware that he's going to be raving about when he's an old man. And of course, there's money. And of course, yes, you are managing some top players, but the week in, week out is not the Premier League. I've been told that, he quite likes the idea of Roma if they were to part company with Mourinho, although I don't think that's going to happen. I think they kind of seem to be slightly on an upward trajectory again, Roma, with Mourinho. And then you look elsewhere, Real Madrid. Obviously, there was talk that they didn't kind of take him up on after some talks last summer. Ancelotti's just won La Liga with them. You'd be mad. I know it's Real Madrid, so anything could happen, but I think you'd be mad to let him go. So I don't really know what opportunities are going to be out there for Conte. I do think his best bet is Tottenham, and I think Tottenham's best bet is Conte. And it could end up being an absolute marriage of convenience that ends up being a beautiful, loving marriage. God, that sounded really weird, but you know what I mean? It could be that it ends up working for both parties, because if Conte can do the things he's done before with Tottenham, it will be bigger than anything he's achieved in his career. It will be incredible. So yeah, that's what I want to happen. Obviously, this is a big defining week. That meeting after the season, that's got to be put to the back of the mind. It's all about this week for the now. And yeah, some people have said, why should he be talking about his future? He has to be focused on this week. I agree, but I think I wrote an article. I did write an article. It wasn't by anyone else. Where I said, I think there was a slightly better way you could have dealt with it. For me, and again, who am I? I think someone put this under one of my things. And this is why you're the journalist and he is the world-class coach, which is quite right. But what I would have done, maybe in terms of the communication way, I would have said in that press conference, yes, I want to manage Tottenham Hotspur next season and I want to win things. That is what I want to do. I want to be here. I want to be taking Tottenham to exactly what they can do next season. And I hope that the squad, I hope that my ambitions align with exactly what the club wants to do. And that's it. That's all you have to say. And that technically appears to be the truth. And he's kind of said a version of that in the past. But I think at that point in the season, to hammer that home would have inspired the players, thinking, okay, he wants to be with us next season. It inspired the fans. It's great to hear. And it would have also continued to put the pressure on the club, because it would have left no room for doubt that if he goes in the summer, it's because they didn't back him and they didn't have the same vision and ambition that he had. And I just felt like it was a nice little crunch moment where he could have said that. But I understand that, yes, he is very focused on the now. But also to spend half an hour swerving questions about that, it didn't quite work for me. But, again, it then went out and won 3-1 at the weekend. So who am I, quite frankly? What else? More housekeeping. So on Monday, I went to the under-23s match at the stadium. It was a good turnout there as well. Wasn't the greatest game in the world, 0-0 against Brighton, but a couple of kind of interesting points. Dane Scarlett was starting up front. he had a tough day, a bit of a frustrating day. A couple of nice runs, a couple of nice attempts to try and get shots on goal, but he was quite frustrated, a bit like those early Europa Conference League qualifying games when he, started for Nuno up front, just feeding off scraps. And that's obviously a side of his game that's got to improve on. The ability to create things for himself, I think. But he's definitely bulked up. You can see being with the first team all season he's strengthened. He looked out. He didn't look like a kid among other kids, if you know what I mean. He looked like a first team player that had come to play with the under 23s. And bear in mind he's only 18. You know, it shows kind of his physical development as well. He looks. Remember he was a 16-year-old, wasn't he? Coming on, he became the youngest person to ever get an assist in the Europa League when he came on for Spurs under Mourinho, and he looks a world away from that player already. But it's been a frustrating time for him. Remember what Conte said about Scarlett about a month ago. I'm seeing a lot of improvement today in Scarlett. Honestly, I have to tell you this. Seeing that this guy is improving a lot. He's only 17 years old, but I can tell you that he's a really important prospect for Tottenham. He has to be patient and work behind these very important players and continue to work in this way, because about Scarlett, I can tell you I see a brilliant future for him. But it's been a tough season for him. It's been a learning one. But in terms of club football, he's only scored one goal. Is that in the EFL Trophy? I think it was against Oxford. European international football has been more fruitful for him. Played for England under 19s and he scored 10 goals in 10 matches. Been flying for them. But, I just think he maybe would have benefited from playing even more under 23s matches this season. Just having a bit more of a split between being with the first team and with the under 23s, because he's not getting enough game time. He's learning on the training pitches, but I do feel that young players, they learn maybe even more from, he had that half season or so under Mourinho where he was in and out and a fair bit of time with the first team squad. But I think to have spent all of this season, he's been on the bench a lot, don't get me wrong, but he's not getting minutes. And it's a big difference in the way you develop. From what I understand, unless Conte decides otherwise over the summer, the club will look to give Dane a loan next season, which is what he needs. He does need it now. I think when he was, people were calling for it when he was like 17 in this season. I don't think this season would have been particularly right. And to be fair, Spurs did turn down, I believe, a loan offer from Bournemouth last summer. Because they wanted a guarantee of if he's going to go, he's got to play he's got to play in every game or a certain degree of game time, and that obviously couldn't be given, so that didn't happen. But I think now at 18, I think it's the right time. They're expecting a lot of approaches from more Championship sides, although there's a feeling that League One is probably better for him at this age. And I think Troy Parrott's the best example of that. Obviously, he went into the Championship last season with Millwall. Didn't work out for him. And then, obviously, he went to League One with Ipswich, but then properly this season, League One with MK Dons. And he's been excellent. Kind of had a real development spurt, as it were, especially in the second half of the season. He's become a real kind of key player in their promotion push. And I think that's what Dane, personally, obviously, there'll be people that want him to go abroad. There'll be people that want him to go into the Championship and all that. But I just feel you've got to be really careful at this stage in his development. He is still so young, and you don't want him to kind of have his development stunted. And you're seeing, like with Keanu Tete, we're going to talk about him a little bit later in the loan roundup I'm going to do. With Keanu Tete, you just saw his progression. League Two, scoring goals. Then he went into League One, he started scoring goals. And he may go back to League One next season. He may even go into the Championship. Who knows? He's kind of really made an impact. And that's kind of, Spurs have learnt this season about their loans with their, especially strikers as well, how to get it right. And I hope they do that with Dane as well, because, he could be some player. I'm hoping he goes on the tour, because I'm obviously, it looks like hopefully I'm going on the tour as well as I used to always do. And I'd love to kind of just watch him in action again with the first team, and also get a chat with him as well would be good. So that's with Dane. In terms of the other attackers on the day, Romain Mundell was very good as well. Iago Santiago was good. I'd say they were dangerous, but without creating service for Scarlett. I think that was the one thing that did let them down. But they both were threatening. Let's put it that way. A nice little bag of tricks, the two of them. I thought Jamie Bowden was good as well. Jamie Bowden was very good. He had a free kick that deflected onto the bar, he had a header that forced a good save from the keeper. He played very well. He was captain. He's obviously 20 now. He needs to get out on loan next season. Niall John was back and he got the full 90 minutes, which for him would have been a godsend after very little football in recent months. But I have to admit, the player stood out for me on the day was Alfie Devine. I'd say it's a difficult one. When I say stood out, I'd say Jamie Bowden probably made more of an impact on the game. And actually the defence were very good as well for Spurs. Malachi and Marcus was there as well. And yeah, defence played well. But what I would say is that just Alfie Devine, he catches the eye. He really does. He's only 17 years old, but he's an organiser. He is. He would, 1 minute, he would pop up in like a number 10 role just behind Dane. And the next minute, he'd be playing an anchorman role. And you'd see him telling all these older players, like the fullbacks, or, say Jamie Bowden, for example, telling them, oh, you go there, I've got this, and all this sort of stuff. He's a real character. From what I understand, talking to people about him, he's very, how do I put this? Aware of how good he can be, but not in a bad way, not in an arrogant way, but in a good way. He knows his quality, and he's you could see the way he reads the ball, reads the game even, is very good. Yeah, it was fascinating to watch. He's got terrific technique, close control, an eye for a pass, and you just see he reads the game like an older player, and you can tell he's going to be some player. I mean, he's stepped up into regular. This is what I was saying about Dane Scarlett. Alfie Devine, there was a loan approach from Leyton Orient, I think, for him last summer, or certainly this season, which was turned down. And I think from what I understand, I think the player would have been keen on the move, but I do think for him, it's been like he's a little bit younger than Dane. I think it's been a more natural progression for him. The under-23s football, and he's got 11 goals and 3 assists in 20 appearances for the academy this season. He's ticking along nicely, is the way to put it. He turns 18 on August the 1st, and interestingly, I think Spurs have kind of changed their view on what they're going to do next with him, because the original plan for him was, if I haven't said this before, I think I probably have, that you, as a young player, you have to be at the club for 3 full seasons to be considered, but before a certain age. I think it's maybe before maybe including the season that you're 18. I can't remember, or maybe even 21. I can't remember. But anyway, at some point, you need to have been there for 3 years to be considered before a certain point, to be considered a club-trained player, which obviously is very helpful for you then on squad lists. For example, earlier this season, the Europa Conference League, Alfie Devine couldn't play in those early matches because there was no room for him in the squad, because he wasn't eligible even, to be in the B list of younger players, because he hadn't spent that time frame at the club, because he came from Wigan in 2020, I think it was the summer. So he's only been at the club for 2 years. So the original plan was to keep him for another year and get him to that 3-year point, and then he never has that issue again. But he's developed so well, and I think the player is very keen now to go out and play first team football, that I think Spurs are going to look to look at what offers come in for him and very strongly consider sending him out on loan. I think that probably will happen now. Again, I'd probably agree that I think maybe League One, League Two for him is a good training ground for him to start off at and get used to the adult game, really. There's a lot of belief in him. He has, obviously set the record, didn't he, as the club's youngest ever goal scorer with that goal against Marine. But he was also on the bench, wasn't he, against Leeds in the Premier League this season. I think Middlesbrough in the FA Cup as well. I think he was on the bench there. So even Conte sees how good he can be. Yes, they had a few injuries, but still, for a 17-year-old to be on the bench, you've got to be quality to be a 17-year-old on the Premier League bench. So I think this loan movement, it kind of could be the making, because he's outgrowing academy football already, despite the fact he's only 17 now. and that's what I think we'll see, which will be hopefully a good move for him. Quick loan roundup. Tanguy Ndombele was back from injury. He played about 20 minutes for Lyon as they won 3-0 at second place Marseille to kind of keep Lyon's European hopes alive. So he's back now, and he certainly played his part. He made a few tackles, interceptions, and they did score 2 goals after he came on as well. I'm not sure whether he was directly involved or not, but he did his defensive work. Celso grabbed an assist at the weekend as Villarreal lost 2-1 at Deportivo, but then obviously last night went out of the Champions League semi-finals against Liverpool, despite kind of getting themselves back into a good position. Who else we got? Brian Hill, he only played a single minute for Valencia. They drew 1-1 with Levante. It could be because of those hip problems he had recently. Had a hip injury, and maybe they're just bringing him on a bit slowly. Didn't play too much in the Copa del Rey final last weekend either. Pape Matar did well. Metz got what you never know, could end up being a big point against. They drew 2-2 at Montpellier. He got the full 90 minutes. Who scored gave him a rating of 7.03. And I looked up some of the stats. He had 3 shots on goal from midfield, 1 on target, made 2 dribbles, had an 83.3% pass success rate from his 30 passes, also made 4 tackles, 2 interceptions, and 1 clearance. Bear in mind, again, only 19. And he's been, he's started roughly 2/3 of the matches in Liga and come off the bench in every other one that he's been available for in a team that is fighting relegation. That is big for them. And it's tough for Metz to stay up. Mathematically, they can still do it. I think there's 3 games left, and they're, 6 points behind the relegation playoff spot that 18th place has, which, if you're not aware, it's similar to like the Dutch league, I think, do it as well, where the 18th place team in the league above will play one of the teams that hasn't got automatic promotion from the league below to see who kind of gets to play top flight football the next season. So they're 6 points off that, and I think they're 8 points off absolute safety, 17th spot. So look, they got to win their last 3 remaining games, and I think they're playing Lyon at the weekend. I'm pretty sure I remember thinking that Sarr and Ndombele are going to come up against each other, which should be a really interesting game. I think it's a lunchtime kickoff on Sunday. So yeah, good stuff for him. He's really developing. I'll be intrigued to see what happens with him. My gut tells me probably a loan at Tottenham, maybe 6 months with the team and then a January loan, unless Spurs decide it's more important for him to be playing a full season of football. We'll see. Cameron Carter-Vickers, another old firm derby for him. Seem to be so many, don't there, in Scotland. There was 1-1, which was good for Celtic because it maintained the 6 points at the top of the Championship. Really interesting to see what happens with Carter-Vickers now, because he is... Obviously, Celtic have this option to buy him for $6 million, with another $4 million or so in add-ons for the future if he meets certain targets, or they do. But there's a fair few Premier League clubs starting to be interested in Cameron Carter-Vickers as well, because he has been brilliant for Celtic. I mean, really good. There was quite a lot of surprise that he wasn't kind of in the running for some of the Player of the Year awards in Scotland as well. So maybe an interesting decision for him to make. It kind of looked like it was a bit cut and dried that Celtic would get him, but he might feel maybe he wants a crack at the Premier League. It'd be interesting to see. Personally, if I was him, I'd maybe stick with Celtic for the time being, because I think he's onto a good thing there. He's very settled. The place loves him. All the club and the staff love him. The fans seem to love him as well. Maybe spend a couple of years there first, but I am not his agent. Jack Clark, he set up quite an important own goal for Sunderland in Sunderland's game against Rotherham. They equalised quite late on. I say important because it helped keep Sunderland in the playoff chase, and also eventually ended up stopping Rotherham becoming champions of League One. And then he played, I think it was 64 minutes, I wrote it down. Yeah, 64 minutes in a 1-0 win at Morecambe. So Sunderland are in the playoffs. They'll play Sheffield Wednesday in 2 legs. Troy Parrott played well in MK Dons. I think they beat Plymouth, was it 5-0? 5-0 at Plymouth. And they're now got semis, finals, playoffs against Wickham. So we could end up with a Jack Clark, Troy Parrott final, maybe. Or it could be neither of them. But He could do. And Dennis Serkin, obviously, at Sunderland. He used to play for Spurs as well. Who else we got? Keanu Tete. He didn't play in Cheltenham's last game of the season. I'm not sure why. I know he's had a couple of injury issues this season, but I don't know why he didn't play. He was saying his goodbyes to them on social media. His season, he played 13 times for Cheltenham, scoring 3 goals and laying on 3 assists in League One. In the first half of the season, obviously, he was in League Two at Northampton, where he scored 6 goals and provided 2 assists in 23 games. So really good season for him of development. As I said before, Niall John, back at Spurs, played in that under-23s game on Monday. Awful loan at Charlton. Just didn't work at all. No game time whatsoever. Really frustrating for him. Yes, he got experience of being in a League One club, but ultimately, if you're not going to play any minutes, it's kind of useless. So he's back, and hopefully they give him a better loan move next season. I don't think Spurs are particularly delighted at how that worked out, as you'd understand. Alfie Whiteman, not a great start to the season with Degerfors. They lost 6-0 against Elfsborg the other day. I think they've lost their first 6 in a row in the Swedish top flight. And yeah, they had a tough season last season. He played a big part in helping keep them up, and it looks like it's going to be another tough season for him. Spurs, I think, have got a recall clause on him. They can bring him back if they need to, in terms of if they're having goalkeeper problems. But you'd imagine he'd want to stay there and crack on. So I think that's the loan roundup done. Obviously, more and more of those are kind of coming back now to Spurs. What else? Bits of housekeeping. The kits. Seen some of the new kits for next season. Did a bit of scouting across the World Wide Web this week to see like the leaked images, and you can tell which ones are real and which aren't. Home kits is right. it's the plain white one with the kind of little yellow collar and cuffs on the sleeves as well. Away one's going to divide opinion. Like a purpley chest with like a yellow collar area and navy sleeves. Third one appears to be a light, like a turquoisey patterned shirt, which is probably my favourite of the 3. Then you've got a pre-match shirt, which they'll wear when they're warming up before games, which is a light blue one with like Spurs written all over it. I quite like that one. And then you've got a couple of training tops. There's a all black one. There's a bright yellow one. They've got this night colour called Volt, which is like a high-res yellowy kind of colour, which you'll see on various Spurs apparel and gear this next season. So yeah, have a little look. Look on my Twitter account. I chucked a load of them out there in a piece. As always with kits, some people couldn't care less what they're going to be. Some people have very strong opinions. Some people are disgusted by them. Some people really like them. Yeah, let us know what you think about them. They're interesting. Nike, everyone keeps asking. There's 2 things everyone always asks each year about kits. The first one is, when are we getting rid of Nike? Well, Spurs signed a 15-year deal, I think it was, with them in 2018. They're not going away anytime soon. And it was a lot of money as well. And the other one is, why have we got to have the red logo all the time? The reason is because AIA pay an incredible amount of money and their logo is red. And you don't want your brand, your logo on a shirt kind of merging in nicely. You want it to stand out. And unfortunately, their logo is red and it is a red sponsorship logo. Yes, I agree. It doesn't look particularly great in terms of the colour. And I actually prefer the way the AIA looks on often the away kit. It's normally white, isn't it, or blue. But hey, there's business. Hopefully, all that money gets put towards good things for Tottenham. I can already hear people going, no, it doesn't. What else? And that's it, really, I think. Just Liverpool this weekend. I'll be heading there, hopefully. I'm still waiting for my accreditation to come through. Hopefully I will. I've actually booked into the Titanic Hotel. It's called, I think it used to be, so it's not called the Titanic Hotel. I can't remember what the name of it is, but it used to be the headquarters of, is it the White Star Line company? I've forgotten now. The company that made the Titanic. Essentially, it's where they announced on the balcony that the Titanic had sunk. They announced it to the world. And that sounds like I've been, Alistair's staying at a very posh hotel. Actually, As Guesty told me, you better get in there quick because all the hotels in Liverpool are like 300 quid a night. And so I went searching, and funnily enough, there's one hotel, which is a very nice looking hotel, was like really reasonably priced, like a third of that, if less than a third of that. So I was like, okay, I'll book that. I think it's sold out now. But yeah, it was just randomly. Everyone else had rushed for the Premier Inns and Travel Lodges and Holiday Inns or whatnot. And this really nice hotel, which is my daughters and wife are very excited about because they were massive fans of the Titanic movie. I was going to say Titanic fans, but can you be a fan of a boat that sank? I don't know how that works. They love the movie. So they're all quite jealous that I'm going there. But sorry, bit of a Titanic tangent there. Hopefully, it's not going to be the day when Spurs' top four hopes sink. That was a really crass metaphor, but you know what I mean. Hopefully, Spurs can pull off something special. You know, they've gone to Man City at the Etihad when they weren't expected to win, and they were superb there. And they have done this. They can do it. You know, I've seen them in the Bernabeu play incredibly well. I've seen them, you know, come back in Turin at Juventus and play incredibly well. I've seen them rescue a vital point at the Nou Camp, or the Camp Nou, depending on how you want to pronounce it. We've seen them have big nights in football, and obviously we've seen what they did in Amsterdam. So it's not like it's a no way. And they'll believe that they can get something. I just hope it's 3 points, because if it's 3 points, it changes the dynamic entirely of the final 3 games. If it's not, it becomes more difficult. But don't get me wrong, Liverpool are going to be a formidable opponent. They really are. They're playing so well. And like I say, they've got that stability and they've got so many, the quality, the options they can bring. And that's what Conte wants. Conte wants to look at his bench and see similar standard players able to be brought on. That's the key. So there you go. Sorry, I'm aware this has been a longer one, but it was so much to fit into this one. Because I left it that extra day or two, it meant there was even more to fit in. So sorry if you're one of those. I do get them. It's like, can you not do these in 15 minutes? It's like, no, I can't. I can't. You try fitting all of that into 15 minutes. But thankfully, most people seem to enjoy the slightly longer one. I had some really, really nice people coming up in recent weeks at matches and stadiums and on trains, and it's really nice to meet people. They're always lovely. Very fortunate thus far. I haven't had anyone come up and be horrible. They're always really nice people. More people at the under-23s game. I think it was Daniel and his family were lovely the other day. And yeah, anyway, I'm going to head off now because you've been listening to me waffle on for long enough. Hopefully be able to do a video on Sunday this time because of the Saturday game. Maybe come back in on, and I get back late on Sunday afternoon, so maybe I'll try and record something after that. Hopefully talking about something good that happened at Anfield. But yeah, anyway, enjoy the rest of your week. We've got the press conference on Thursday afternoon, and obviously Liverpool on Saturday, and ahead of a crunch week for Tottenham Hotspur. So there you go. Right, as always, look after yourselves, stay safe, stay healthy, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.